Hey, welcome back. Remember to drop a like to feed this fluffy like eating chinchilla. r/AskReddit. What is your funniest NSFW story? At a house party, the host was a good friend of mine who we'll call Johnny. Johnny's night party got a little out of hand one year. A couple that he didn't even know locked themselves in his bedroom, which was a big no-no. Johnny is banging on the door telling them they need to get out of there. The guy just yells, "Fuck off," from inside the room. So without a moment's hesitation, Johnny takes one step back and kicks the bitch right off its hinges. Me and the guys drag the very drunk trespassers out the door as they pulled their pants back on. The next day Johnny went to Home Depot and got a new door. I was at a house party when I was younger. There were maybe 30 people there. One of the bedrooms was open for couples who wanted to have drunk sex. About halfway through the night, we hear the most horrific, blood-curdling, high-pitched scream coming from upstairs. We all rush upstairs and there was a girl and a guy in the room, both naked. She is standing by the guy, looking thoroughly confused and horrified. He is on the ground, in the fetal position, in a pool of blood. The host asks what happened, and the guy says something happened to his dick and removed his hands from his crotch. His dick was peeing blood, at quite a rate. It was rather horrifying to behold. We call an ambulance while we try to do whatever first aid we could. While we were doing that, the girl started explaining what had happened. She was on top, really going for it. The dick slipped out and she came down on it with her full weight. She said she actually felt it break. That's when he started screaming, threw her off him in the bed, and rolled onto the floor. We got the full story a week later. The fracture had broken both blood-filled spaces in the urethra. With the urethra open, the blood flowed from high pressure to low pressure, hence jetting out of his dick. He had surgery to repair the damage and was not allowed to have sex for 6 weeks after. Since he was in our friend group, for the few weeks, we would randomly play the Cannibal Corpse song, "I Come Blood," around him. We were all metalheads, so he knew it from just hearing the first few bars. I'm still friends with him, and he still will never engage in the cowgirl position in any form. I just remembered a second story, which I will detail below. When I was young, I went out with a girl who had specific kinks and wanted to play them out. One of them involved me in a Santa suit. Don't ask, she wouldn't explain it. So we are at her parents' house while they're out of town, and we are going at it. I'm wearing the top half of the suit and hat, and the literal bells are jingling. We are both getting close, so, in a moment of horny inspiration I yell, "Ho ho ho, Santa's about to blow." That's when we heard uproarious laughter from the other side of the house. We are too far gone to stop, so we finish up and sheepishly make our way into the kitchen. Her parents had arrived home early, but she had missed the text. The one laughing was her father. Her father takes one look at me and completely loses it. I had forgotten to take the hat off. Her mother wouldn't make eye contact with me. The worst of it is that we had planned to sit down for dinner that night. The whole night, her father wouldn't stop making not-so-subtle jokes, and her mother wouldn't even look at me. We broke up a couple of months later for unrelated reasons, but I won't forget that incident. Years ago, at a previous company, one of my coworkers was always trying to push the boss's buttons, and he was pretty good at it too. We got contracted to do some repairs at a manufacturing plant in town, but their scissor lift was broken, so my boss said to rent one for us to use. My coworker instead decided to use his full arrest harness with a double-hook lanyard to Spider-Man his way across the ceiling to get from one end of the factory to the other. The boss was screaming at him, but couldn't do anything because there wasn't any lift around yet. I didn't get why you commented this at first until I realized it was very literally a not safe for work story. Once when my hubs and I were still dating we were trying to smash, but be polite about it. I lived at home, so we boned on the floor instead of the bed, which would have creaked. What we didn't count on was the fact that the little pillow we used to help with the height difference also opened my hips in a way that really let in air. The queef was massive, loud, and went on for so long that both of us were in tears by the end of it. We had to take a laugh break, and even once we got back into things one of us would just lean towards the other and softly whisper, "Queef," to set the laughter off again. My college had this online quiz where you got points for doing immoral acts. One section was on places where you'd had sex, so you got points for having sex in these weird places. My now fiancé and I basically used that section as a checklist and hit a lot of places, breaking several laws in the process, I'm sure. One place on the list was a classroom, so we waited until nighttime, went into one of the classrooms, and went to town. He was taking my jeans off when one of the campus safety officers opened the door. She stared at us for a second and said, seriously? My fiancé raised his hands and said the name of the quiz. She shrugged and closed the door. I realized later that her life is probably a montage of finding students banging in various places on campus, and this was probably one of the weirder ones for her, which is why she was both dumbstruck and out of fucks to give. Okay, here goes. It was first day of middle school, and we had an assembly so that the principal, vice principals, etc. could introduce themselves and give a little information on what to expect now that we have moved on from elementary school. The auditorium we were in was pretty big and it was packed. There ended up being no place to bring the kids with disabilities, so they parked them on the stage. During the speeches/talks, one girl with significant issues, who was in a wheelchair on stage, facing the audience, pushed her shorts to the side and started to masturbate on stage. Of course, all the students started to laugh hysterically as more and more of them figured out what was happening, but because this girl was facing the same way as all the staff, they did not realize what was going on for quite a while. The first staff member to realize what was happening was, I believe, her it, and so she ran onto the stage to try to stop her from fingering herself by grabbing her hands. This made the girl super angry, and she fought off the aid only to go straight back to fingering herself the second her hands were free. Another teacher came over to try to help, and now the girl got vocally mad that these people were trying to interrupt her self-pleasure time. She started screaming and flailing her arms at the staff, and in between flails would take a second to go back to fingering herself once again. Finally they wheeled her off stage and out the doors, all while she was screaming and flailing, and you could still hear it going on out in the hallway. Of course everyone started laughing and talking about the side entertainment, and so the principal came on the microphone to try to restore order, and when everyone finally settled down they proceeded as if nothing happened at all. I closed the restaurant I worked at and was given a waitress who I was fairly decent friends with a ride home. We get into the car and I ask if she wants to smoke a joint. We smoke the weed and are listening to the radio. Yada, yada, yada. My pants are down, she's in my lap, straddling me, and we are going at it. All is good until the light from the brightest flashlight blasts in through the side window. Roll down the window. The police. Bets gets off me and I roll down the window as I try to pull the condom off. I panic and instead of calmly rolling the condom off, I try to pull it off. The condom just tightens around the base and stretches up to the roof of the car. I frantically try to pull it until my boner deflated. It was probably only a couple seconds, but it felt like a year. Then snap, the condom snaps off into my hand and I can pull my underwear up. The officer asks, "What's going on here?" I answered vaguely, something along the lines of, "Well, you know, we were just, you know." The conversation goes like that for a bit, then the officer asks Bets if she was there voluntarily, and she said she was. He gave us 5 minutes to get dressed, and if we were still there then he'd arrest us for something. I roll up the window and Bets is sitting there with her knees tucked into her t-shirt laughing her ass off. We went to her house and smoked another joint and laughed it off. I forgot to mention that the officer commended us for practicing safe sex. Okay, so my dating experience was limited. I had my first boyfriend at 18, and after I dumped that guy I was single until 21. I met a guy I thought was super fun, super cute. We had all the same nerdy hobbies like Dungeons and Dragons and WoW. We flirted, made out, cuddled a bit, and finally got around to agreeing to date. So the one evening, I invite him over to hang out at my apartment for the 2010-ish version of dinner, Netflix and chill. I'm ready for him to smash and he knows it. I spend all afternoon and evening beautifying. I'm looking like a snack. He rolls up about the same as ever, which, after I spent all that time getting ready, I'm a little disappointed, but whatever. I'm still getting laid, damn it, and that means something. We go back to my room and I put a movie on. We make out. Touching ensues. I'm clearly ready. He's clearly into it. I finally ask if he remembered to bring a condom in with him. He stops and says, "No." It was a bit like being hit in the face with a sack full of wet mice. Okay, I think. That's inconvenient, but it's alright. Well, do you want to go out and get some really quick? I ask him, in my most suggestive prayer. He sits for a second and thinks about it, then goes, "Nah," and just goes back to kissing my neck and touching me. Okay, so I was not about to do it without protection. But I also didn't want to completely destroy what precious little remained of the mood. I thought that maybe if I just teased him a little more, he could be convinced, since he was clearly still interested in continuing on some level, and being as inexperienced as I was afraid he would think less of me if I didn't throw him a proverbial bone after getting him going, even if I really thought this was his fault to begin with. So, naturally, I go down on him. Look, it made perfect sense to me at the time. I was 21 and exceptionally naive, and crushing hard on this guy. So I'm kneeling on the floor at the edge of my bed with his dick in my mouth, trying to ignore the fact that he hadn't trimmed it while he was clean and didn't stink. There was absolutely nothing sexy about getting pubs in my teeth. This was a mistake, I thought to myself. Still, I couldn't very well just quit after I'd put myself in the situation. So I resolved to finish things up as quickly as possible. Dude is having the time of his life, and meanwhile, I'm drier than a Gobi desert because of all these levels of bullshit. I didn't stop to check, but it's entirely possible that my vagina hermetically sealed itself shut in self-defense because I was so turned off. Finally, at long last, he's about to blow. I get ready for it. And somewhere, in the recesses of my mind, I know that something awful is about to happen. I couldn't put my finger on why until he let go. Then I realized that I'd never seen this young man eat a vegetable aside from potatoes or a fruit. He was a meat and cheese guy all the time. I'm sure you can guess where I'm going with this. Rancid. Absolutely the vilest taste I've ever had in my mouth. I froze. I panicked. My gag reflex kicked in. I'm kneeling on the floor in my bedroom with a dick half in my mouth, pubs in my teeth, and a mouthful of cum that tasted like rotten meat smell. And I didn't know what to do. I definitely didn't want to swallow. I couldn't sprint out across the hall to the bathroom. My roommate was home and I was topless, and that would have been awfully impossible to explain. I wanted to spit it out, but I didn't want to vomit all over my bedroom floor because the thought of it getting in the carpet and that smell never coming out was heinous. So I played coy for about the longest 10 seconds of my life before he got up, put his dick away, and went to the bathroom to wash up. Whereupon I discreetly threw up into an empty water bottle. I screwed the cap on as tightly as possible to try to mask the scent of the biological weapon I'd just been forced to hold in my mouth, and hid the damning evidence under my bed until after he left. After that, I hid it in a box, and the whole thing went into the dumpster like some kind of unspeakable war crime. Didn't date him for long after that. That whole experience just turned me off so bad I could never get intimate with him again. An ex-girlfriend of mine. I was dating this girl for about 6 months when we went to a big film party sponsored by some vodka company. My date got fucking hammered. Like unattractively hammered. So we were driving home and I look over and she hikes up her skirt and starts pissing all over my seat. So, the thing. You wouldn't think a girl, a human, could expel that much liquid, but here we were. We pull into her house and she opens her door and runs inside. I had to run around and close her door because it was a 2-door Sunfire and those doors were like wings. Took me a few seconds to head inside. By the time I get back to running around to the front of her house, I notice she's standing outside hunched over a small garden. I'm assuming she's throwing up, so I go over to check on her, but she puts her hand up and says, "Stop. I'm shitting." And I look down, and there's diarrhea all around her feet. She literally exploded. I didn't know what to do. But fuck man. I had to do something. This was one of those "how the fuck did this become my issue to fix?" situations. Here's where things get interesting. I ended up calling her sister. This girl took literally 10 minutes to come to the door, but when she did, she had 2 kettles of near boiling water. The girl I was with ran inside and her sister came out, handed me a kettle, and started pouring it all over the ship. I basically did the same. I was floored to learn this wasn't her first time doing this. So then I go inside to find my girl. She made it as far as the upstairs bathroom, where I found her naked, laying on her side, throwing up, shitting, and a tampon string hanging from her amongst all of it. I learned a great deal about how capable a woman's bowels truly are on that evening. Finally, once she was cleaned up and ready for bed, like 2 hours later, I left, got into my car, and realized my passenger seat was still soaked with piss and the car was wrecked. So I guess you could say it was a pretty good night. If that wasn't the end of the relationship, I swear you're an actual saint. Laugh out loud. We ended things a few months later. The next day she played it off like she didn't remember anything, despite also apologizing for pissing all over my car seat, which I had not brought up to her at that point, and I just downplayed everything. We had like 2 months left of university together, in all the same classes, and I figured it wasn't worth rocking the boat. Thanks for watching. Remember, every like puts Mario Chinchilla closer to finding his gold coins.